Hello and happy Friday to everybody. Thank you so much for being here again for NPN's Friday feature. We are doing one of those awesome features where we get to talk to one of our NICU Parent Network member organizations. And today we have Rebekah Mitchell, who started M.E.N.D, which is short for Mommies Enduring Neonatal Death. And Rebekah, I'm so glad that you're here. I love having these Friday conversations with our members because there really is something very special about hearing directly from the founder, the co-founder, about your organization and what, hearing a little bit about your experience and what prompted the development and creation of M.E.N.D. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. So thank you so much for joining us. I know you guys have a huge event tomorrow, so double thanks for spending time with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I always appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.
Absolutely. So tell us, let's just start right there. Tell us about your loss experience. I'm especially glad that we have you here on the last day of September because tomorrow starts Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. So,
yes, it does.
I couldn't think of a more perfect person to talk to as we kick that off next month. So if you would, please tell us about your loss experience.
Sure. So my husband, Byron, and I, right after we got married, I was diagnosed with a very serious kidney disease. I was only 19 when we got married. So, oh, great. Here go my dogs barking. It's how it is with life, right?
No, it is okay. Don't worry about it.
So anyway, I was diagnosed with a kidney disease that I had no idea I had. And so a couple of years later, we expressed an interest to my doctors to start a family. They were pretty hesitant, but said the decision was ours. They laid out all of the risks. And so I always say they didn't give us the red light. They didn't give us the green light. They gave us the yellow light. So we went forth and right off the bat got pregnant with our first son. He was born only 6 days early. Miraculously, he was full term, but he was born with the cord wrapped around his neck 3 times.
Oh my goodness.
So when he was 3, we expressed an interest again to our doctors if we could expand our family and have another baby. And again, they laid out all of those risks. And once again, that light was not red or green, but it was a brighter yellow. Mm-hmm. And so right off the bat, we got pregnant a second time. However, this time I began having complications pretty early in the pregnancy with my kidneys. They were so, at that point, I only had about, maybe 25% kidney function. And at my age, I should have had about 100. And so of course I was very high risk, but then things sort of evened out and things got okay. And once I reached viability, they put me on bed rest. And then when I was around probably 27 weeks, they put me in the hospital to watch me very closely. And every day, my nephrologist, my kidney specialist, and my OB would go back and forth. Do we deliver you? Do we not deliver you? And then just horrendously one day while I was there in the hospital trying to get far enough along where Jonathan would not be so premature, he just flipped enough in my womb where he became completely entangled in the cord. When the nurses came in one morning to take routine vitals, he no longer had a heartbeat. Oh. And so that night I had a C-section and they discovered that the cord was around his body and his left leg. And the crazy thing is my first son, who is now a 31-year-old man or almost 31, the cord was around his neck 3 times. But with Jonathan, our baby that was stillborn, he just wrapped in it. And so, so that is my story of loss. And it goes without saying that first year following Jonathan's stillbirth was the very worst year of my entire life. Yeah. My family and friends were so supportive. They grieved with us. Did not know of anyone who had suffered that type of loss. I actually did know one person who had a stillbirth a year and a half before I did. Oh. But weirdly, she did not reach out to me. She came to the hospital the next day, but she didn't reach out to me. And during that grieving process, that first year, and I look back on that and I think it was sort of providential because if she had, I would have had that support of someone who understood. But the fact that she didn't reach out to me, and I felt so alone even though, again, I had such wonderful support from my family, I realized what a need there was for women who had experienced a loss, just like me. Despite the love I had from my family, I still felt so lonely with not being able to connect with other women who understood how I felt. And so, just about a year, coming up on a year after Jonathan's stillbirth, I felt compelled to look through what was then the Dallas Times Herald and to look through the obituary section. Back then, people included their babies in the obituary section because it was free. And we don't see that much today because it's quite expensive. And so,
Realize that.
yeah, so back then in 1995, 96, it was just as common to see a baby in the obituary section as it was, an adult.
Really?
So, so I felt compelled to look through the obituary section of the Dallas paper that day. And sure enough, I saw a notice of a little baby whose family lived about 30 minutes away from me. And I wrote a card to this mom and let her know that my baby was stillborn the summer before. If she ever wanted to connect, I would be happy to connect with her. And I mailed it to the funeral home that was listed in the obituary, hoping they would forward it to this mom. They did. And we connected, and then it snowballed. And before long, it was another mom, another mom, and another mom. And with the help of my dad, who at the time was an attorney that specialized in nonprofits, and then our CPA friend who also specializes in nonprofits, I formed M.E.N.D, Mommies Enduring Neonatal Death. And so even though the word neonatal is in our name, we reach out to families who have lost a baby to miscarriage, stillbirth, or early infant death.
Wow, Rebekah. Oh my God. I mean, I just have chills. And just thinking about, because so your loss was, 30 years ago.
27. Yeah, 27. Yeah.
27.
Yeah.
My loss was almost 15 years ago. And, and it's interesting that you talk about the obituaries, because I talk about how that was, that was when blogs were a big thing.
Yeah.
And it was before Facebook really took off. But I remember the same thing, just looking for that support, because I did, my family was wonderful, same kind of thing. We had, there was a family support specialist from the NICU was actually with us the moment Zoe died in the PICU. And so we had these resources, but what I couldn't find was someone who had a baby in the NICU, brought them home, and then they died, and so I would find groups that were for stillbirth or just miscarriage. But I would feel guilty because I actually got to hold my baby.
Right. Yeah. And take your baby. Yeah. Yeah.
I got to take her home,
Yeah.
And so then I looked at child loss, but then it made me feel bad because it was, older children. It was, they got to have that first day of kindergarten day. And it was really, really just, I could never find my place. Knowing that now we still have such a need for this type of support. And you just took that initiative the way you did 27 years ago when there really was no support. I mean, I think, these days we talk about loss. I think we still need to talk about it a lot more than we do. But, 27 years ago, it was even different back then.
It was just when things were starting to change as far as, for example, my husband has a former employee that she thinks she was about 5 or 6 months along. Back then, some of these women didn't even really know how far along they were.
Right.
And she delivered a baby. She went into labor and delivered a baby on a plane. And all she remembers is they wrapped that baby up in a newspaper. They did an emergency landing, took her to a hospital. She has no idea if that baby was a boy or a girl. She has no idea what happened to that little baby. That's just how it was back then. It was horrendous. And so thankfully we have come so far with that of encouraging the families to hold the baby, see the baby, make memories, have keepsakes with the babies. We still have some ways to go. So my loss in 1995, things were just starting to change.
Yeah.
I knew one of the nurses who worked down in labor and delivery at that time. And when they could not detect a heartbeat in Jonathan, they were announcing code blue all over the hospital. Code blue, room 1142, code blue 1142. And so my friend in labor and delivery knew that was my room upstairs. She came rushing up. And so she was sort of my person during that time to tell me what to do. And I remember her saying, Rebekah, when you deliver, you definitely want to hold him, you want to see him, and you can even keep him in your room.
Yeah.
Well, I knew I wanted to hold him. I knew I wanted to see them, but I was horrified by the thought of staying in my room like at night while we're asleep. And but once we delivered him and saw him and had him,
Yeah.
we actually didn't keep him at night. He went to the morgue at night, but there was in a situation where there's nothing more unnatural than holding your dead little baby. It was so natural to hold our sweet little baby.
Yeah.
And so we actually had him for several hours that night. And then he did go to the morgue, like I said, that first night. And then we had him for about 12 hours the next day. And then my husband and I had him for a couple of hours the following day before the funeral home came.
Yeah.
I thought that was normal. I didn't realize at the time that that was not normal for families to do that back in 1995.
Right.
When my friend said you could have him as long as you want, I thought that's what people did. And
Right.
so I found out later that once I was discharged, they had all of these discussions with the nurses and pastoral care and social workers at my hospital of, wait, the way the Mitchells did it, was that okay? Was it not okay? Was it normal? Was it not normal?
Right.
And we all came to the conclusion, like, why not? And
Right.
yeah, let them have that time with the baby. And
Absolutely.
so I've been told that because of the way our family handled it, their whole policies changed at that Dallas hospital.
Wow.
And I just didn't know any different.
Right.
And some people thought that we grieved so deeply because we spent that time with Jonathan. But
Mm-hmm.
actually, we know in the mental health care world, that is not true. There are
Right.
so many women that have horrible mental health issues because years ago they had a stillborn baby or even an earlier loss, like my husband's former employee that doesn't even know if she had a boy or a girl.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And thank goodness you had that nurse to guide you, because, that's one of the things that I also think about over and over, because of the NICU support person that was in the PICU with us. And we even had one of our neonatologists. So these are people who took care of me and Zoe while she was in the NICU. And we were in a hospital across the street from the NICU, but we called them. And if they had not been there, I wouldn't have known. Just like you, I wouldn't have known that I could
Yeah.
hold her. I
Mhm.
wouldn't have known I could have given that I gave, we gave her a bath, that we could just spend that time with her. I wouldn't have had that, just knowing what the culture of that PICU is,
Yes.
because we had kind of these outsiders with us, advocating for us.
Yeah.
Because, that's a day that you don't get to redo.
No, you don't get back. And we in M.E.N.D, we give trainings to hospitals all the time to healthcare providers from a parent's perspective on
Yeah.
how to care for a family when a baby dies. And that's one of the things that I talk about is to encourage for these nurses and pastoral care to encourage the families to hold their babies, because that window, it used to be this small. Now it's about this small. It is a little wider.
Yeah.
But once that opportunity is gone, it is gone. And in my 26 years of directing M.E.N.D, I'm not saying they're not out there, but I have never met a family who they were given the opportunity to hold their baby. They chose not to, and they're okay with it. 100% of them that I know of regret that decision, that they
Mm,
did not choose to hold their baby, even though they were given that opportunity. And
right.
as we've just established, once, there does come a time when it's too late and you can't
Right.
get that opportunity back.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like, just kind of backing up a little bit, M.E.N.D kind of came to be organically. I mean, was there a specific moment where you said, okay, we need to do something for other families? Because I've heard from some with these Friday features that we've done, we've had some that are, that have talked about like just this nagging thought in their head after their baby, either passed or came home from the NICU. Others were like, it was just like light bulb moment. We have to do something immediately. So talk to me a little bit about the actual creation and formation of M.E.N.D, and kind of how did that come into your mind and in your heart?
Well, so that first year, I was really struggling, not only emotionally with grief, I was also struggling physically because my already weakened kidneys were continuing to shut down, and I was really struggling spiritually. And I just really struggled with, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And so during that whole year, I did feel kind of a stirring that something good was going to come from this, but I didn't know what. And so I spent a lot of time in bed that year because I was grieving and I was physically ill and, things like that. And so there were times that I would have this, I don't know, a thought or a dream or a vision or what have you of my speaking to doctors and nurses. And every time I had this thought, I imagined myself in the auditorium at my Dallas hospital. And then I would think, that is so crazy. I am such a mess, a wreck. Who in the world would even ask me or want to hear anything I have to say? Fast forward, interestingly, the very first time I was ever given a speaking invitation, guess where it was? At that hospital, in that auditorium.
Wow.
At
Oh
auditorium
my
at
God.
Methodist Hospital in Dallas. Yes. And so,
Wow.
so I really feel like God was, putting that in my heart and preparing me
Mhm.
for what was to come.
Yeah.
But again, I think it was just when I came in contact with that mom that I sent a letter to from the obituary section after my 1 year anniversary, that I realized there are a lot of women out here dying in their grief. I
Yeah.
was too. And
Right.
so I just needed that connection, connecting with other moms. And plus, at that time when the internet was sort of new, I got on what's called a listserv. I don't even know if listserv still exists. It's sort of kind of like a chat room.
Right.
And it was called Infant Loss without the T. And it's crazy. I connected to all these women all over the world that had lost a baby that I never knew. I was just addicted to it because these women understood, these complete
Right.
cyberspace strangers
Right.
understood. And so I think that was part of it too. I knew we needed to bring something out of cyberspace and into the real world. Where on this listserv, we would talk a lot about the phantom kicks. I thought I was going crazy. I didn't tell anyone. I thought I could still feel my baby kicking inside me. I didn't know there was a name for it until I connected with these women, the phantom kicks. There were a couple of times I would awaken in the middle of the night thinking I heard a baby cry, and I would put my feet on the ground to go into what was supposed to be my nursery, thinking Jonathan was crying, and then, oh yeah, he's gone. Or the literal ache in the crook of my arm. So all of these things that I did not tell a soul because I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to send the people in the white coats to come take me away. And then when I connected with other lost moms, I realized that these are all very normal emotions and feelings that oftentimes we don't share with anybody but ourselves, those of us who have experienced a loss.
Yes.
And there's just something so different about the loss of a baby that only those of us who have walked that road can truly understand. It doesn't matter how many children we had prior or how many children we have after. That baby is still one of our children. That
Absolutely.
we move forward and we go on, we create that new normal in our lives, but we never get over it.
Right.
We always, we in M.E.N.D, we always say, we always remember.
Yeah. I mean, we carry that.
Yes.
We carry our children, all of them, with us for so long. I mean, forever.
Forever.
It
Yes.
never go away.
No. Yeah. I mean, I have a almost 31-year-old son and a grandbaby, but Jonathan and then a little baby that we miscarried several years later, they will always be a part of our life, a huge part of our life, because that's our story and that's our family. And kind of back to what you were saying earlier about the, different types of losses and where do you fit in? It is hard to get to group everyone together by their specific loss. So we say in M.E.N.D, our stories may be a little different of how we lost our baby, because some of us have had maybe a 6-week miscarriage. Some of us had, like me, a 29-week stillbirth. Some, like you, had a baby die after you got to take her home. So all of our stories are different, but the outcome is the same. And even those that had an early loss compared to those that had a neonatal loss, we always say, again, the outcome is the same. A loss is a loss is a loss is a loss.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the other really important things about support for, the bereaved parents, especially because I did the same thing, I did end up finding a loss in multiple birth, because that was the other thing, was that I still had 2 babies alive
Mhm.
that I had to keep caring for. And so that was a whole nother dynamic, that
Yeah. Yes.
in in what my experience was. But finding that loss, so I found one of those online. It was a listserv also 15 years
Maybe it
ago.
was the same one. I don't know.
It might have been. But what was really beautiful for me was the veteran moms that were still a part of those chat rooms or listservs
Yes.
10, 15 years, that would provide such hope. Because to me, especially like you said, that first year crushed me,
Yeah.
and I could not imagine that I would feel better, but I also couldn't imagine feeling this bad for the rest of my life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
you know but hearing from these other moms who had continued to live and find purpose in their lives and find joy again, I mean, that's what gave me hope that, like, number one, I wasn't crazy, because I didn't have the phantom kicks, of course, because she was older, but it was the pain in my arms for
Mhm.
sure. So those things, that just like you, I knowing that I wasn't crazy, um and knowing that, okay, life is going to be good again. I'm
Yeah.
not going to feel this bad for the rest of my life. And
Yeah.
that was just so important. So let's talk about exactly what MEND does.
Okay.
So
Um,
tell me exactly what MEND does for families.
Yes. So all of us in MEND, we say we're experts by experience. So
Mhm,
it is a requirement that everybody in MEND has personally experienced the death of a baby through miscarriage, stillbirth, or early infant death.
mhm,
But we also require that all of our leaders are at least a year out, because we think it's before they can even apply for any type of leadership. We think it's very important for families to go through that first year of the grieving process before they get into leadership, and let us love on them before they roll up their sleeves and want to help. We don't even let them serve on any of our committees to volunteer or anything until
right.
they've reached that first year. So that's
Yeah.
one thing that sets us apart, is that we're all lost moms and dads,
Well,
and
can I stop
we
you for 1 second? Because what I really loved about what you just said was that it wasn't like, no, you're not ready for this. It was, let us love on you for a
yeah,
year
yeah,
first. I
yeah,
love that. That's
yeah.
beautiful.
And
Sorry.
so everybody has to have experienced a loss, and we're all volunteers. So nobody, not even me, nobody's paid. So these are all, we all just, serve out of love, because we understand that heartache. And so we have several chapters. We're based here in the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex, where we offer monthly support groups. We are non-12 step. We don't ever have a guest speaker. We don't ever have a set topic. Once a month, we gather. We have 2 locations here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area where we offer in-person monthly support groups. We just share for about an hour and a half.
Mhm.
And then again, we also have chapters in a few other states. I think there are about 10 in-person chapters that we have right now. We also have online opportunities for support. We have what we call our national online support group, where families can get on through Zoom the third Thursday of the month. So we have that. We have what we call our subsequent pregnancy group, or the rainbow group, for
Yeah.
families that are considering becoming pregnant again or are currently pregnant again. That's a whole nother issue.
Yes.
And so they gather online once a month.
Mhm.
We also have what we call our Men of M.E.N.D for the
Mhm.
dads, and they gather on Zoom nationally once a month.
I love
So people can come to our in-person support groups where we have a chapter, or they can join us online for
it.
those opportunities once a month.
And
Uh,
do they find those, the in-person groups, is that all something that's on your website?
yes, it
How
is.
would somebody know? Okay.
Yes, they just go to our website at mend.org and click on Find Support, and that's where they will find information about where we have physical chapters as well as our online opportunities.
Okay. And
So
then you said you also do, training for
yes.
hospitals?
So we go into hospitals, doctors' offices, whoever
Mhm.
wants training, needs training. And what makes us again different is a lot of the nurses and healthcare providers, they get training from a clinical perspective, but
Mhm.
where we come in is from a bereaved parent's perspective. And
Mhm.
so here in Dallas, I partner with some of the nurses where we may go in together, and the nurse may give the clinical side of it, and then I follow or go before her and give the parent perspective. So even though some of that information is the same, they get to hear it clinically and they get to hear it personally. And so we
Right.
talk about why it's important to make sure that families make memories and have keepsakes, and we give them ideas of how to encourage them to hold the babies. We even talk about what was helpful, what was not helpful, things like that. So so that's what makes us a little different. So we give presentations to OB-GYNs, to nurses, to doctors' offices, and they're all to NICUs, to emergency departments, and they're all of our presentations are tweaked to that particular audience.
That's what I love to hear that you're going into emergency rooms.
Yes.
Because, so many areas of the hospital, you don't even think about where a loss might occur, and they happen in the emergency room. They don't always happen on hospital bed rest or NICU. That's
exactly great. Yeah. So we offer that. And then we publish free magazines, and all of our services are free. We publish free magazines. Each issue focuses on a different topic pertaining to pregnancy and infant loss. So people can subscribe to that magazine, and they come in the old fashioned mailbox, just like a little magazine.
Wow.
Yeah. And they go all over the United States. And we have a Facebook group. So each of our chapters has its own Facebook group, which enables families in the same area to connect with one another. And people who are in an area where we don't have a physical chapter, we encourage them to join our Dallas-Fort Worth one, which is our headquarter chapter. Okay. So that Facebook group. Yeah. And then we have ceremonies, like tomorrow is our Walk to Remember here in Dallas. And then we have our Wave of Light ceremony on October 15th. And then we have a Christmas candlelight ceremony. So all of our chapters are a little different in what they offer as far as ceremonies.
That was my next question.
That's what we offer. Yeah.
That was my next question was, do all the chapters kind of follow what headquarters does, or do they, kind of tweak things based on what they're
all of them have some sort of October event. None of them are as big as our Dallas walk, but some of them will have just a very simple candle lighting. Some of them will have a balloon release. Some of them will just gather together, maybe even just meet at a restaurant. They will do something in commemoration of October as National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month.
That is wonderful. So mend.org is really the hub. So if people are looking for a group or looking for an event, that's the best place to go. But then you're also on Facebook. Are you on any of the other social media channels?
Well, so we actually do have an Instagram account. It's just a little under construction right now. I'll say that. Okay. So Facebook is probably the best social media platform to reach us.
Yeah. Wonderful. So why don't you talk a little bit about your event tomorrow? Does everybody have to pre-register? If someone is in the Dallas area, are they able to come tomorrow, or do they need to register?
Yes, we do encourage them to still come, even though our registration is closed. And we only close it because we do provide those who pre-register with an ornament it's personalized with their baby's name and birth and death date on it. So if people just walk in, they absolutely can still come and participate. They will still get a beautiful ornament, and we will still call out their baby's name at that portion of the ceremony where the families come forward and place their ornament on a tree as we recognize their baby. It's just not personalized with their baby's name on it. So we just have to cut the registration off a few days early in order for our team to personalize the ornaments.
Great. Wonderful. And all that information is on the website.
Yes, it is under events, under upcoming events. If they click on upcoming events, you'll see the information.
Wonderful. So let me ask you, what is one thing that you wish every bereaved family knew?
I think in my years of experience, one of the biggest fears I believe that those of us who have lost a baby experience is that people will forget. And we go on, as we've already established, we never forget, but we're so afraid that family members and friends will forget. And so I think it's up to us as the moms and the dads to keep our baby's memory alive. And so what I would say to grieving families is, it's okay to keep your baby's memory alive. And I encourage you to do that. And it's okay to talk about your baby forever and ever and ever. And remember your baby at holidays, and remember your baby. If it's in your heart to do that, don't keep it there. Don't shove it down. Don't be afraid to talk about your baby. Always remember.
Wonderful. I couldn't agree more. All right. So I'm going to ask you to do a fill in the blank. Bereaved families are
often very misunderstood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. I think people who have not experienced the death of a baby, they think they know how they would feel. I've been said that so many times. Well, I wouldn't feel that way. Well, I don't think I would still. How do you know? How
Right.
do you know? Because you've never experienced the death of a baby.
Right. Absolutely. 100%. Anything else you want to add, or anything that we forgot to mention about MEND or bereavement, or just anything that you want to?
I think I think we covered everything. I just, again, I just want to express to families to I don't ever want to leave the dads out, because the dads certainly, they grieve very differently, but they are still grieving, absolutely. So that's
Right.
the first thing. Dads, connect with us, connect with our Men of Mend. It's a beautiful opportunity for these dads. My husband is the co-assistant of that group, so I eavesdrop as they're having their Zoom meeting, and
Yep.
it's really a beautiful time of these dads,
Mhm.
to talk about their little ones. And so just know that you don't have to carry this grief alone. You don't have to live in this sorrow by yourself.
Right. Well, I think that is the most beautiful way to end, by saying that you don't have to live in this sorrow by yourself, because that's exactly what MEND provides
Yes.
for these families. Well, Rebekah, I just can't thank you enough. Thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you for all the work that you've done over 26 years, to carry Jonathan on, forever, by helping all of these families. Thank you for all
Well,
the work
thank
that you and
you.
your team
Thank
do.
you for what you do, and thank you for, we've benefited so much from your organization, and I really appreciate it. And thank you for having me on. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope everybody has a great weekend. And next Friday, we'll be back with our first Friday of the month, which is when Gigi, our board president, and I do our Let's Talk About Race topic. So we will see you next Friday.